One of the other things you mentioned then is that product page or kind of your product detail page, you really need to have that dialed in to optimize for conversion. What have you found works well for that piece?
Yeah. So the most important thing for product detail pages, and this won't come as a surprise to anyone who's done Shopify stuff, is having a good image.
You've mentioned some great tips here, Ian, in terms of look at that cost per click, look at the categories you're showing up in, look at the placements, make sure you've really optimized your product page around that. Is there anything else that's really helped you drive results for your products?
To a certain extent, you have to pay attention to the pricing atmosphere for, what other similar products are selling for, but you don't want it to be something where you've become a commodity and it's a race to the bottom. So this kind of gets into kind of thinking smart about marketing and positioning, thinking about the types of customers that you're appealing to, really stressing the points of differentiation for your particular product. Like, so if you're a book publisher, you see this all the time with books, they want to stress the expertise of the authors that they have, or they want to say it was a bestseller, a legitimate bestseller in some category. If it's another type of product, maybe like, let's say that you have a coffee grinder. The coffee grinder is certified by the International Coffee Makers Association, something like that, where you can put that on your A+ detail content or some other thing that you can add that lets people understand your product, understand the quality, understand why it's better, which gives you a little bit more flexibility on pricing and not kind of become this race to the bottom type of thing that we do see in some categories on Amazon, like phone cases or something like that.
Tell us a little bit about how do you look at the analytics? How do you think about your campaigns and maybe compare it for people who are used to Facebook ads, Google ads? What's the difference? What are the similarities? And sort of what are you doing there when you're looking at your account?
Yeah. So Amazon actually shares quite a bit of data. And this is, I think, an encouraging thing. However, sometimes the data they share, it's in a way that is unfamiliar. They'll have metrics that they invented on their own that if you're a Facebook marketer, you're thinking, what? ACOS, advertising cost of sales, what's that? And the other thing about this is that sometimes the metrics that Amazon gives, like it's all about the gross sales. They're not talking about Amazon's cut from their various platforms. They're not talking about your own costs. So when you're selling something on Amazon and you're using Amazon advertising, when you're looking at those metrics, by all means, you need to understand like what your margins are already, what the cost of the product is. The other thing is what I usually do when I'm looking at Amazon metrics, and I'll share an image with you later on. They have all kinds of charts that show trends. They'll show a list of keywords and the impressions and the number of clicks and the cost per click and things like that. I found that sometimes you have to create metrics on your own. And for instance, two metrics that are really important to me are cost of sale, which is something you can get on Facebook. Amazon doesn't make that available right away to you. The other one is just the conversion rate. So what I do is I take the data from Amazon, I put it into Google Sheets, I create my own metrics so I can really, spot the trends that look good and sometimes spot the trends that look bad. Like, hey, the cost of sales for this particular item for this book, it's $13. Like that's just wrong because the margin on these books is not that much. So I do like the Amazon metrics, but also I recognize that there's some things that are missing. So you have to fill in the blanks by using Excel or Google Sheets to do that.
Yeah, it sounds like for some of your key metrics, you're even kind of running formulas and that's not in the platform itself.
It's not in the platform, but I also want to say, like earlier in the interview, I said that Amazon is constantly inventing, like improving their technology all the time. So to give you one example, Amazon came up with this metric I've never seen before, but actually it's quite useful. It's called top of search percentage. So on certain types of campaigns, they'll show if a keyword, if you're getting a certain percent, it's usually, I think it's a minimum of 5%, where it allows you at the current bid level, 5% of the time, your bid on this keyword is resulting in your product being shown at top of search. So that's a really useful thing to have sometimes, and to show you like not necessarily the long tail keywords, but some of the other keywords where you really want to dominate. So what I'm trying to get at is Amazon is introducing new things constantly, metrics and also features that let you better understand what you're doing and also maybe open up new avenues for selling on Amazon. And here's another one that's still being developed quite a bit. They didn't have retargeting for a long time. About a year ago, they did introduce retargeting, but in a really limited extent, not nearly as good as Facebook, in my humble opinion. So that's something that I'd like to experiment with now. Another thing that they've done recently is allow video advertisements, which I've been experimenting with a lot. I found that the ROAS is not as good as just a simple image or text campaign, but it's still something that I can try out. I can, maybe something I'm trying out on my Shopify store or a Facebook campaign. If it's performing well there, that image, I can bring it into Amazon advertising campaign.
That's great. Are there tools that are helpful to know about, Ian, either in, keyword research inside Amazon? Are there third-party tools that kind of look at your competitors? Anything like that you're using?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And I know the tools are out there, particularly on the keyword front. I don't use them a lot. And part of that is I'm a little bit concerned that sometimes Amazon, especially if they discover you're integrating your Amazon data with an external party, it sometimes can have bad results. And I'm a little bit paranoid about that. And if you talk to Amazon sellers, you'll hear this all the time. They're called, automated lockouts or AI lockouts, where you've done something, you're not really sure what it is, but they've sent you an email nastygram saying you've broken the rules, we're suspending your account, send us a plan of action to describe how you'll fix this particular problem. And you may not even be aware of what you've done wrong. And I think some of that sometimes comes from third-party integration. So I don't really use those particular tools. I know they're out there. I can't recommend any, and I'm sorry about that. One tool I do use, however, that doesn't have a direct integration is the Google Keywords tool. Google's really good at generating those keywords, and then I can just take that list and then bring it right into an Amazon advertising campaign.
Is there a way you recommend to, kind of speed up the learning process for people who are just getting started on this or optimizing their campaigns? Any resources that have been helpful to you outside of getting in there and testing things?
So I've been kind of like a DIY, learn by my mistakes type of thing. I will say this though, in my experience, the learning curve for Amazon advertisements is lower than the learning curve for Facebook advertisements. For Facebook, as I had to really, first of all, I had to sit down and, watch a lot of YouTube videos to figure it out. And then eventually I had to turn to you guys and say, I need some help with this because it's really hard to work with. Amazon advertising, I think if you have, some, basic skills using other online tools, whether it's Shopify or Google or Facebook, I think you can kind of get the feel of how to create a campaign. Analyzing the data takes a little bit more work. I've created some videos myself and posted them on YouTube, but I don't know if there's like a central source that you can go to. Amazon has something called Seller University, which they try to encourage their sellers to go to, which explain the basics. But for the, getting a little bit deeper into the weeds about how to, kind of get the best practices, that's a bit of a harder thing, unfortunately. I wish I could tell you more about that, but it's in many ways Amazon advertising platform. It's younger and less developed than Facebook or Google, which have been doing these for like 10 or 15 or even 20 years in the case of Google.
And like you mentioned, Amazon owns the customer. Yes. Anything you can do to build your brand. Have you found anything that works? I know there's strict rules around this. You don't get people's emails. You're not bringing them over into Klaviyo to your site. But I can imagine for your business, for one side of it, people could be repeat customers, or they could get upsold and cross-sold. Have you found an effective way to build that brand? Maybe it's even inside your books. You're referencing other books, anything like that?
Do things like that. So, I say in the front matter and the back matter of a book like LinkedIn in 30 minutes, I'll have some promotions for, the other books that we have. These are 5 of our other books that we publish. But the other thing is, I'm actually going to give you an example of Instant Pot, which everybody should know by now. Fantastic tool. That started out on Amazon Seller Central as a bunch of Canadians. They came up with this idea for this pressure cooker, programmable. They launched it on Amazon. It was doing so well there that the strength of that brand enabled them to kind of spread out to other channels as well. And when you have people searching on Google for Instant Pot, or going into Walmart or going into Target and saying, hey, where's the Instant Pot aisle? That's a big win. So by all means, I really encourage people who are getting involved in Amazon selling or Shopify selling, make a brand that's memorable, that represents quality, that people will come back to, that people will recommend to their friends. And that's probably like one of the best things you can do, because as you just mentioned, Amazon does not let you own the customer. They own the customer.
Ian, I can tell we're going to have you back on, not least for telling us about publishing on Amazon too. So let's do a separate episode about that sometime.
But absolutely.
This has been great. You've educated me a lot, and I know our viewers will get a lot of value out of this, or people listening on the podcast. Where can people find you? Where's a good place to reach out to you and see what you have going on?
So if you're interested in the books that I just mentioned, go to in30minutes.com. If you're interested in kind of the stuff related to online selling, if you go to leanmedia.org, that's my website. There's a book that I've published about kind of creating media for online channels and for other types of media businesses. But also I have a blog and videos on that website. that explain a little bit about Amazon advertising, Amazon KDP publishing, and some of the other things that I've learned as an e-commerce seller over the years. And that's at leanmedia.org.
All right. We'll put those links in the show notes here. Ian Lamont from i30 Media. Thank you for being a great client, and thank you for joining us and sharing your expertise on what's working in e-commerce.
Okay. Thank you, Egan. See you later.